everybody. My name is Sering Tondop, and I chose to take up knitting as my presentation choice. And here's what I came up with. Well, first of all, we're going to talk about the items required to start knitting. And obviously the first one would be the needles. As you can see, the needles come in different sizes and different broadness or thickness, and each of them have or serve a different purpose depending on the kind of material that you want to make. And secondly, we're going to talk about the knitting yarn, and basically throughout this presentation, the needle and the yarn are going to be the two consistent things that you're going to see in every slide, and they're the two materials that you use and the primary tools for knitting. Alright, and throughout the presentation I'm going to be answering a few of the questions, and some of the questions are my reasons for choosing this activity as my presentation topic. Secondly, I'm going to be talking about why men's participation in this activity is not as popular as women, and then we're going to address some of the challenges that I faced while knitting, and also talk about some of the experiences and the value of it on my personal state. And lastly, I'm going to relate some of this experience to what we've been studying about in the class. Before we move any further, I'd like to spend a couple of seconds addressing the history of knitting and how it has changed over time. Well, in the early years, as the slide mentions, people used knitting as a necessity to make clothes with. And over time, this whole concept of making clothes for survival has changed to an extent where people now use it as a hobby. And it is clear that technological advancements have changed, and society's way of thinking as a whole has changed as well. And it is very important that people understand where this is coming from. The reason why I chose this assignment was because I've grown up seeing my mom knit all her life pretty much, and I've always wondered how she could sit down in a chair and knit all day, and never understood what it took to make something with your own hands and to actually embrace and appreciate what you put so much effort into. The reason why I think knitting is more popular amongst women than men is because it dates back to primitive days when men were considered food gatherers for the family, and women just stayed home and did all the chores that were necessary to keep the household running, and which included food and shelter. Although initially invented by men, women started using the technical skills for knitting and used it in addition to their daily chores. The Industrial Revolution changed the face of knitting from a skill that was a necessity to a skill that was maintained as a hobby. It is also very obvious that knitting is perceived as a female activity because my friends had a good amount of laughs and comments to make while I was working on it, which I thought was a very interesting observation. The main challenge I faced in knitting was obviously the fact that I was trying it for the first time. This meant that it would take me longer to finish a piece. It was initially a turn off for me because I did not intend on doing anything so feminine for too long, but it was well worth the wait. I have a greater sense of appreciation for something I constructed with my own hands. The other challenge was that I kept feeling the need to justify or explain to my friends that this was only for my class instead of claiming it to be a hobby if that was the case. It is hard to like something when society has already labeled some tasks with a sex symbol. This experience has been great. Through knitting, one can experience a greater sense of responsibility, and more importantly, a sense of patience and a greater respect for all your efforts. I love the fact that hard work pays off in the end. I think knitting completely relates to what we've been studying in class. It is evident that there's a great amount of stereotype attached to this fun activity. My opening slide showed a picture of only women knitting, and I think that reflects so strongly on the kind of society that we are a part of. It also adds to the stereotype that most women's activities are passive and they don't require too much effort. But little do people realize that it is challenging in its own little ways. I've had lots of fun doing this activity, and I thought it really added to my personal development. I also thought that it did spark a form of respect for the amount of patience it took into making a piece of cloth, and I totally enjoyed this whole experience, and I would recommend this activity to anyone that I come by. And just to say thank you for giving us this opportunity to take on an activity such as this. It was great fun. Thank you.